Hi everyone, I'm coming back. I promised that I would answer the questions that I didn't get to. But they posted a lot of questions and they're really good questions. But I'm going to whip through these questions hopefully as fast as I can, but as productive as I can to help you understand the concepts that you have questions about. So these are the questions that people have submitted from the live Q&A session they were on live and I didn't get to their questions, and I feel like that's something I want to answer. So here I am. So let's get started. A question about moisture content in lumber. And she is, I believe it's a she, is noting that the recommendation that I make for moisture content in lumber is moisture content 15. You have to ask for this, and it's usually a special order. She's asking if that's true for the cold climate of the Adirondacks. Absolutely, it's true in every climate, no matter where, because mold grows at a moisture content of 20 everywhere on the planet. So it doesn't matter where you are, mold is still going to grow moisture content of 20. Kiln dried lumber everywhere that I'm aware of, definitely in the United States and Canada, but probably around the world, is kiln dried to 19, which is just 1 percentage point away from where mold will grow, hence the problems we're having in lumber mold. And so my recommendation is to request and special order lumber with a moisture content of 15. It's possible. I actually am on the American Lumber Standards Committee. I'm the architect representative for the United States to this committee, and I'm asking people there every time I go if they can do it. They tell me they can, but nobody asks for it. So we're going to change that. That's my mission. And we can. So we just have to start asking about it from our local suppliers, and it's probably going to be a wholesaler supplier. So this person, Cordelia, has access to green lumber, rough sawn green lumber, and she's asking if they store their lumber outdoors in the weather. Should she patronize or avoid it? Or pass on to a local artisan who could do the drying? Any guidance or recommendations? So I never recommend using green lumber in a construction project of any kind, not these days because we're building super tight buildings. Air drying of green lumber will happen, but it takes a very long time. It used to be done back at the turn of the century in the early 1900s, and that lumber ended up being super hard because it was air dried. But I don't recommend using green lumber because it'll take too long to dry, and the propensity for that moisture to be trapped and cause a problem is too great. So I would, unless you can have it dried, now you're mentioning you might have a local artisan who can dry it. Yeah, if you can get that lumber dried somewhere else and dried to 15, then I would certainly use your local supplier. If you measure the moisture content and it's already been dried because of how they're storing it to 15, then it would probably be fine. But just know that the bigger the lumber components, so say they're 4x4s or 6x6s, 8x8s or something like that, it will take a lot longer to dry because the lumber is drying from the inside out. And I have a whole class on this in the Build a Safe Home course, so I'm not going to go over any more than that on this specific topic, talking about lumber and wood materials. So, but just in general, I'd recommend moisture content 15, and I would pass on anything green. The next question is considering going with piers for a foundation, either precast concrete or helical piers, galvanized helical piers. Do they present possible problems of rust and moisture? This precast, would you advise using waterproof? Generally, the concrete is not going to degrade below the ground. It is possible that metal will, so I would probably lean towards, just from what I know about metal versus concrete, but the concrete's probably reinforced with some metal in it, and higher strength concrete is more resilient against moisture than lower strength. But I think it's unlikely that something as bad is going to happen with your piers. And then there's a question, but I would ask your structural engineer, I would ask your soil engineer, because you may have some other reasons why you want to choose one or the other. But I will also say that it's definitely not my expertise, piers. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not going to say that I'm a super expert on piers. Then there's a question about an air gap between the grade and the floor. What do I recommend? Well, that air gap is basically a crawl space unless you're going to do a slab on grade. And you can do a slab on grade over piers. If you're going to have an air gap, it's going to become what we call a crawl space. And the question is how big it should be. It should be big enough that you are going to be happy and comfortable going in there and looking around underneath your building. If it's too small for a normal sized adult to easily maneuver and look around comfortably, then I would say that's too small. So my number will probably be around 3 feet tall at a minimum. I would prefer 4 personally if it were me, because I'm a little claustrophobic. But you can decide what you would want to go into 2 times a year to check to see if the wall, anything on the perimeter is leaking, if you have any plumbing leaks from above. That's the advantage of having a space below. And yes, you're going to need a vapor barrier with rough gravel below, and we talk about that in the Build a Safe Home course in the foundation section, although we don't even mention piers, but everything else is the same. The piers are just holding up what couldn't be held up on the soil itself, and then we go straight into the different kinds of foundations and what we do to make those as efficient and as waterproof and mold-proof as possible. So that's a whole module of probably a couple hours of content, so I'm not going to go into all of that, but know that yes, you should have your gap, your crawl space be a short basement. It could be a tall basement. It could be whatever you want it to be that you can afford and is in alignment with your goals. But I would definitely recommend that if there's a space, you should be able to go into it and feel comfortable. Question about whether that should drain away. Yeah, probably it should drain to something. I recommend that space isn't below grade if it's not going to be something that you're going to put a sump pump in and manage moisture, because anything that's going to be lower than the exterior grade is likely to become a puddle at some point. And then another question about sills, whether pressure treated wood presents chemical sensitivity problems. I'm not aware that it does, although some people are super sensitive, and so you should test a piece yourself. But know that pressure treated wood isn't an all-encompassing term. There are many different grades of pressure treatment depending on the application. And generally for sills, we're using pressure treatment that is of the lightest possible application, the safest possible application, and it's for wood that is not going to be in ground contact and not likely to be in water at all. So you can use moisture-resistant species of wood as well, and you should have a capillary break under that. Now, there's also a question about is it common sense in using a heat pump to power a hydronic radiator? That's actually something very common that's being discussed more and more, and there's no reason not to consider that. That would be considered taking an air system and turning it into a water system, an air-to-water heat pump, and that's definitely something that's doable. We don't get into that extensively, but we do have a whole module on HVAC and all the different kinds, and know that there are many different kinds, and depending on your climate and what's available in your local jurisdiction, your local area, who's got the expertise to do what, that's what I would be researching. But yeah, there's no mold reason not to use a heat pump to power a hydronic radiator. Asking about is French drain in additional to sloping? Sure. If you're going to have a swale and it's going to take on a lot of water, you can add a French drain at the bottom of the swale. A swale being like a ditch. So we're going to slope away from our buildings. There's no problem with having an additional French drain. Just get it as far away from your building as possible, ideally at least 10 feet away. If it's not, 5 feet would be okay, which is usually the minimum for side yards on most buildings that I see. But yeah, get that on the lot line as far away as you can, and I would definitely not do anything less than 2 to 3 feet with a French drain, ever. Bridget's asking, what do you spray on the wood frame if you see lumberyard mold? Well, if you research the wood industry, they're going to tell you to spray bleach, and I don't agree with that. That has a very long history of being the solution for everything, and the reason that I don't recommend bleach is because bleach is 97% water and 3% bleach, the hydrochloric acid component of bleach evaporates very quickly and the water is going to soak into the wood. So how could that end well? Initially, it will look nice on the wood, but you've just fed the roots possibly with a big chunk of water, and the mold spores in the air are looking for wet places to land. So there is a possible for rebounding, so I don't recommend spraying anything with high water content on lumber of any kind. I do recommend measuring the moisture content of the lumber so you know what you're doing. I'd measure before and after you sprayed anything so you know what you did and what you now have to have dry. I personally clean wood materials with an essential oil-based cleaner. You can find out about that in my Mold Experts bundle. There's a class in there on plant-based solutions. So there are some plants that mold doesn't coexist with. And so those are really good oils to use as part of cleaning. Of course, you don't put oil on wood materials. It has to have an emulsifier. It does get mixed with a little bit of water, but we want to use the least amount possible. And if you are interested in that, you can check out that class and that whole bundle, Mold Expert Bundle, to learn more about cleaning, because I have a whole class there on that. That is not in the Build a Safe Home course, so you can buy that separate. And then there was a question about me still healing in my video. Yes, it is a journey, but I've been exposed to other things along the way besides mold. But mold too, long story there. I'm not going to get into that, but how do I travel and stay somewhere safely? Do I take air purifiers? I do have portable air purifiers. I haven't taken any on a plane. I don't know that I've ever taken any on a plane. We try to drive. I try to drive when I can. We try to really scrutinize the Airbnbs we stay in, or we stay in a lot of Marriott properties, and try to stay in newer properties that are hotels, and try to stay on top floors. We've paid extra for top floors when we had to. And I do bring my essential oils, and I do diffuse according to the Dr. Close protocols. It's generally not something that you should be exposed to, but I have been known to leave it on when I leave the hotel room and then come back and turn it off and open all the windows. So that has happened. And so I am using Thieves and Purification by Young Living. You can learn more about plant-based solutions in the Mold Experts bundle of webinars. Laura's asking, do you have a list of vetted builders and contractors for individual states? She's looking for people who are well-versed in avoiding mold in the building process. I wish I could say that I had one in every state and one in every country, but I do not. This is a long journey of the people who care the most about this are the people who've been sick. That's what I realized. My original goal was to do continuing education for professionals. That is my background. For 5 years, I worked for the wood industry, actually, educating and sharing information about wood for commercial use. And the people that I was presenting to were architects, structural engineers, and code officials. And I thought that maybe I could do that with the mold topic. But it turns out that the people who are most interested in this topic are actually the people who are sick. Hopefully it's growing with awareness because everybody has the potential to be sick. There are builders and contractors who've been sick. I know of a few, and there are a few who have taken my course. Actually, there's some you can check out. So I know of one in Montana, of one maybe in Iowa that is retired, and he might know people. But it's a growing industry. I do have a lot of contractors that follow me, and if you are following me and you take this course, let me know, and I will go ahead and make some quizzes, and we'll go ahead and get a certification going, and I'll list you on my website. So that's what I have to say about that. I'm happy to do it if there's interest out there, and so I think it'd be great to have. I'm just not sure how many people are interested. I'm also a little cautious always when I recommend people or even mention their names, because everybody has multiple crews and they're not all in control of the person I might be recommending. And so I have had a couple bad situations where I recommended someone who did good work for me, but the work that was done for someone else wasn't that great. And so I feel bad about that, and I'm very cautious. I know what I can do, and I know how I can help. And if I'm not involved in terms of consulting, I you're going to do your best. And the best you can do is going to come from my Build a Safe Home course so that you understand as much as possible so that you can hear things and know when to pull back, when to ask a question, when to take a pause and do some more research or come and ask me, have a consult. So my mission is that you are, through this course, people become way more aware of what they need to pay attention to, what they don't. They understand when they hear a red flag because they've heard what was right, even if they didn't completely understand it. So I've made this course so that anybody could take it, whether you are a contractor or whether you are an in-home owner. It will be obviously easier for a contractor because they'll have the terms, but I've put in sections that a contractor can overlook, like vocabulary. So you won't need that if you're a builder. But the crux of the program, the main concepts of the programs, the fundamentals of building homes that are not going to end up moldy is the same, and it is possible for anybody to understand it. It's how to keep moisture out. So good question, Laura. Karen's asking if metal roof or asphalt shingle are better. Asphalt shingles also usually encompasses fiberglass shingles. And just know that there's good, better, and best of every material. There's good, better, and best installations. And so whatever materials you use, as long as they're good quality and they're coming from a company that's going to stand behind a warranty because it's been around for a while, then, and you're going to install it the way it's intended to be installed. And there's no material out there that I've seen that is good quality that doesn't have installation instructions, because their warranty is going to say if you don't follow their installation instructions, it's not warranted. So there is no perfect material of any kind, whether it's for roofs, walls, foundations. Metal roofs have a longer life in general, but there's some really high quality asphalt and fiberglass roof systems, shingles available now that are certainly worth considering as well. It depends on your climate a little bit, what you might choose to do. There's a lot of variables, but we do talk about that in the roofing section of the Build a Safe Home course. Where should you put AC ducts with a slab on grade? You shouldn't. No AC ducts in the slab, at least. If you're going to have air conditioning ducts, they should be I would use probably truss joists as my ceiling framing and use that space for running my ductwork, and I would plan it so that it all works and that I have the right places for a trunk line to go and for the ducts to come off of that. And then I would insulate and air seal at the floor of the attic above. That's what I'd recommend. We do have a whole class on attics as well. Should everyone have a rain screen, even in the high desert? I would say that is the gold standard, and that's the best solution, even in the high desert. Many of you may know that Death Valley washed out a couple of years ago. The roads washed out, the buildings washed out, and that's Death Valley is a desert. So it rains everywhere sometimes, and one of the reasons we have so much mold in the desert is because the buildings are built like it never rains. But it does on occasion, and you only need one good event where water gets into our building enclosure and can't dry that will ruin that whole building going forward. And we do talk about rain screens in the Build a Safe Home course, in the walls and opening section quite extensively. And the alternatives. Is there a best brand of window for not leaking? I don't think so. So because anybody can install a window poorly. Again, this is the same as a roof. I would go with a window manufacturer that's well respected, that has a good reputation, that has good reviews. Ideally, it's been around for a while so that you know that there's probably still going to be around if in 20 years your window fails in some way that's covered by warranty. I would check the warranty, but know that the warranty is void if the company goes out of business. But no, it's usually not the window that's leaking, it's the installation that is leaking. That poor installation is the problem. What if your setbacks are very small? How do you handle drainage? That would be, you would drain away still a slope, and then you'd probably have a French drain to go somewhere. That'll move water pretty quickly, and it may be along the property line. And this is covered in the code, actually, it's even mentioned. So a French drain is a shallow drain. It's just at the surface, so I would drain away so that you have some sort of at least a slight swale, and then I'd put a French drain in there to get that water away. If zip system, I've had a few questions about zip system. If zip system is not best, what is best? Again, there is no best. There's definitely some great products out there, and zip system can be done well, and it can be done poorly. Tyvek can be done well and poorly. VaporShield can be done well and poorly. There's a million materials out there. I would look for one that is highly permeable. And so you check the perm rating. You don't just say you want a permeable material, because 0.001 is permeable to that amount and 10 is permeable. So permeable has a number associated with it. Again, I have a class on this in the Build a Safe Home course, so you can learn about that more in depth. But no, there's no perfect system. They have to be done well. We have human beings working on our buildings, and human beings can make mistakes. All of these products that are good have installation instructions, and so I recommend homeowners read them as well, so that you, if nothing else, just look at the pictures, because those are going to be the most important details. So that if you go to watch your house, see your house under construction, that you can see something, you say, well, that didn't look like the picture I saw. You can go back and look at it and say, and raise a flag and say, hey, I think we need to reassess this. And I would make sure my contractors are all going to build according to the manufacturer's installation instructions. They should. That's the only way you're going to have a warranty. So, good questions, Karen. Edward is asking, has 2 national builders who are very active in his area, or all the buildings are on slabs and mostly pre-built and delivered on site, even windows pre-installed. Cool. What are common weaknesses national builders might employ for my inspection? Well, the weaknesses is still going to be the foundation. So I recommend the Build a Safe Home course and focus on the slab foundations and the site grading. Those are all code requirements, and they can't, very difficult to fix if they're not done well first. Doesn't matter how great the building is, and in terms of prefabrication, if the foundation is messed up and is going to or the site grading is going to have water dumping on towards the building. In terms of the prefabrication process, they have the same details that they have to follow to keep the building safe from moisture, whether it's built in a factory or not. Obviously, it'd be easier to do in a factory, one would think, and maybe you have specialized contractors or specialized builders that are working on different pieces that they do the same thing every day, and it should be good. So the ideal situation is, yes, that would be good that it's built in a warehouse. But what I see is that prefabricated buildings are also appealing to a very low, often a lower end price point, and there's incentive to cut corners. Also, building codes, just complying with building codes. Some of the codes are vague on certain kinds of flashing, and some of them won't show up right away, and maybe the warranty is over by then. And just know that the requirements in the building codes are bare minimum, not best practice. So definitely, I go through a lot of defects in my course, and that I'd highly recommend you join us, Edward, and I would love to see what you have to say about things we talk about and what you're seeing. Good question. Marshall's asking about the same thing. So I don't know if you guys know each other, but whether a wood-framed house is built at a factory under roof and set on a foundation has a less chance of mold than a stick-built one. The only thing that you eliminate is the potential for lumber mold, I would hope. You would want to verify that. I'd go to the factory and watch what they're doing. You'll smell if there's a lot of off-gassing materials being used. You'll definitely smell it. I did that for the trailer I bought, and yeah, there was some smells, but it was considered low VOC, so it wasn't terrible, but there definitely was something. And so, again, it's a foundation, as I said, for Edward, the foundation, you get one chance on site grading. The foundation, is the roof design going to drain well? Are the details for installing gutters and downspouts and window flashing and connections where there's a change in materials, are all those done well? And maybe they, maybe not. So you basically, we as people who are looking at this stuff, have to know as much as we can know about it to pay attention to the common defects. And there's a long list of common defects that are pretty easy to identify. That may be a book, 101 building defects that I have. I'm thinking about. Oh, Carl, is asking, what's your take on Mitsubishi split systems for AC in bedrooms? I don't have a problem with them. Know that every type of system, whether it's a mini split system, whether it's Mitsubishi, whether it's Panasonic, whether it's some other company, they all have maintenance. They all have installation requirements. They have to be sized properly for the rooms that they're being put in and the climate that you're in. So just take care in evaluating those things. And I think it's always good to evaluate one manufacturer over another. You'll learn things. Why is yours the best? Why is yours the best? And you'll learn things you didn't even know you should be asking. I do that a lot. So that's what I would recommend. But the mini splits are fine. Just know that they've been very common in Europe, and there's plenty of mold in them in Europe. So maintenance is the key, proper usage, getting the condensate drains to go away from the building, those kinds of things. Irina is asking about painting an exterior wall with shellac on the inside, but the wall is exterior facing, and will that create a risk of mold? It is possible if the shellac is very low perm. So just know the term permeability means the ability of vapor to move through a particular material, and there's different ratings for different materials, so you can even look these things up. Like a piece of plywood versus OSB might have a slightly different perm rating. Drywall has a perm rating. Certain types, like latex paint, has a perm rating generally, and there's some that are more vapor open, and there's some that are more vapor closed that act as a vapor barrier. What I don't think is wise is to ever have a vapor barrier on the inside wall of our buildings, because there are times, and she's talking about California mountain climate with dry summers and rainy winters, occasional snow. So there is the potential for high humidity when it rains, at least. And there's the potential for materials to have gotten wet, whether it be from snow or rain. And know that the inward vapor, the drive of vapor is always to the drier side. And the inside of our buildings are very often the drier side. And always when it's raining, or snow is melting outside, or snow is up against a building, the drier side is the inside, and that's where the vapor drive is going to want to go. And we've got to be careful about trapping moisture inside our wall assembly or roof assembly, and let that dry. So I think the safest solution is vapor open as much as possible. So if the shellac, you have to research what the product you're using. If it is in fact creating a vapor barrier, then I would say that it could cause a mold issue. And there's a mention of a ductless mini split with heat. That won't have anything to do with whether you have a vapor barrier on the inside or not. Good question, Arena. Robert is asking, in the Deep South, I think he's saying barndos, so I think it's barn dominiums are very popular, and that is true. How can condensation be handled effectively? I think the biggest challenge, there's two big challenges with barn dominiums. So these are homes that are kind of like a barn, built like a barn. One of them is that they're building them with steel studs and steel framing, steel sheathing on the steel siding. Just know that especially in the South, metal in the sun becomes an oven, and we're going to be trying to air condition these things. The air conditioning is going to potentially make the metal components cold, and then if those metal components can touch hot, humid air, imagine your glass of ice water on your picnic table in the summer, just dripping water. So condensation is a huge problem whenever we use metal. A little bit of a problem with concrete, and much less problem, especially on wood studs. It's occasionally in very cold climates something that can happen on roof decks primarily, or exterior wall sheathing, but even that is not very common compared to the metal components, because we cook with metal. We don't cook with wood. We don't even cook with concrete usually, but wood is a material that doesn't just generally conduct temperature, so it has some R value to itself. So how does condensation be handled? Air sealing, choice of materials that maybe are less conductive, and also thermal breaks. So they call it thermal breaks, but it's basically a break between something that could be cold and warm temperatures, or cold temperatures, however the system is. Just know also the other issue that I see with barn dominiums is the potential to not have roof overhangs, meaning that the roofs are coming down and dumping water right at the foundation. So be careful of that as well. And then he's asking about Deep South for outside storage. Is an air conditioner required? Are mini splits safe? I definitely would at least have him have dehumidification, but I think for the Deep South, a conditioned storage space is probably the best way to go. And at the minimum, if you can handle some heat, a dehumidification is conditioning. So that may be the most important kind of conditioning. Having air movement will keep materials safe. Mini splits are they safe? If they're not maintained or sized properly, then they're not. If they're maintained well and the filters are cleaned and they're sized properly, then they could be safe. So again, any material could be a good material or a poor material depending on the installation and if it's the right installation for the product and installed well. Again, another question about whole house zip systems, whether they're worth the price. Just know that any material can be installed poorly, and unfortunately what I am seeing is that zip system is seen to be something that's almost like an easy button, that I won't have to worry about my building if I use zip system. But understand that the tapes can be installed poorly, there can be gaps in the tape that water can get in, that nails can be overdriven, and these things can happen on other materials too. So it's about the installation, it's about mistakes in the installation, and there is no easy button on just using a certain material and hoping that alone is going to save you and that you don't have to read the installation or instructions. You don't have to use the tape they recommend. You don't have to flash and seal areas that they're telling you do. I've seen projects with stucco where they forget to tape a seam. That's critical in a zip system. And that's not zip system's fault. This is human error. And so that's what I have to say about that. Again, no easy button. Jennifer is asking, we just had our inspection yesterday and we have drainage problems and need major mold remediation. I'm assuming that's a mold inspection. How do you vet companies to find the best ones? So I mentioned my Mold Experts Bundle classes, that it's about 5 webinars, each over an hour long. And that's what I would recommend for you. One of the classes in there, which you may be able to buy on its own, but I'd buy the whole bundle because it includes cleaning, duct cleaning, which you're going to need. And I think it's Found Mold Now What or something along those lines. And that is about remediation. And I do go over the major agencies that certify remediators. They all have links to find a professional in your area, so you could look on the different agencies and see who's in your area that you could hire. And I'd look, at least interview the people that have the highest qualifications. I would not hire anybody who does not believe that mold is a health issue. So if they have a PhD and they don't think mold is a health issue, I still wouldn't hire them. So but I talk about all those things in that course, and I talk about the best practices that I've learned from having my own mold situations in those classes in terms of cleaning and remediation. And so I really recommend that for you, Jennifer. Haddon is asking, thanking me for putting on the Q&A. Well, thank you for saying that. How do you find the equilibrium for your house? So when I say the word equilibrium, that's where the wood materials have settled in terms of moisture content when they don't have an outside moisture source. They haven't been damaged. And this varies by region. So something in Florida or South Carolina or even Tennessee is going to be different than that same piece of wood in Chicago or Montana or North Dakota, Minnesota. And the season changes. So what might be your equilibrium number in the winter is going to be different than in the summer. And know that the equilibrium number changes. I do have a whole class in the Build a Safe Home course on wood materials. I'm not giving you that whole class here because it's, again, another half hour or more class. But just in general, the equilibrium is where the wood is going to end up under normal conditions. So you want to determine that if you have a section that has been impacted by water, you find an area that hasn't, a couple areas that haven't, you say, okay, what's my number for this building, this time of year, in this climate? And if that number inside is 9 or 10, you might find 2 numbers close to each other, and you're finding wood that was previously wet, but it's measuring 16, then that wood is too wet, because everything else, the equilibrium number is 9 or 10. So it needs more drying to get back to what it was probably before the water event. So I hope that's helpful in understanding that concept. And and so that's, I think, what we have for the Q&A today. Thank you again for everyone who came on the live event, for everyone who asked questions. There were a lot of questions in advance. I think we did almost an hour. So you guys have great questions. You're doing a great job studying this stuff and inquiring, asking good questions. And that's what my Build a Safe Home course is for. It's for people who are asking questions, who are determined to think for themselves and try to figure out what they realize is a myriad of confusing information online. There are people who tell you one thing and then a complete opposite thing. And they can make arguments by why both are good. And sometimes you don't know how to discern. So that's my mission in the Build a Safe Home course, is to teach the fundamentals for people to understand enough that they can think for themselves and at least be able to ask a question, raise a flag if something doesn't seem right, and then save them money in the long run. When you do end up with a brand new house full of mold, or a major renovation that's full of mold, and because you saved money in not doing the right kind of research, or because you didn't know, this is your opportunity to know, to sleep well and feel like you have a little bit more tools in your virtual tool belt that will help you from someone who has been through it and who has the qualifications. As a licensed architect, it happened to me. And I definitely felt like I should know better. And even I didn't know some of this stuff. I didn't know you could have mold in your ductwork. I didn't know the right way to duct clean. I didn't know that all the things that are going wrong in our buildings that really smart people are just accidentally overlooking or weren't taught. I wasn't taught some of this stuff on building science. So I've gone through the process of learning it myself to save myself and my own family. So it started with my daughter when she was 10. She's 32 now, and she just found mold in her house again. So it's ongoing. It never really goes away, but you can have the tools to know this stuff, and my mission is to help guide you, support you, and give you the confidence to know a lot about the same kind of stuff that I see and understand. So I do my best, and I think you do a really good job at explaining complex technical topics to non-technical people, because that is truly the only way I can understand this stuff, is if I can explain it, then I know I understand it. But there's a lot of stuff out there that I will step back and say, okay, I got to really dive in deep because I don't even know what they're saying. And but I've been doing this for over 20 years, researching this stuff to save my own family. And it's now my mission to help other people know as much as they can possibly know so that they don't have to go through what I went through. Now remember, the cost of a house is a lot of money. What it costs for this course is a tiny, tiny percentage if you can avoid spending $10, $20, $30, $50,000 on remediation down the road because something was overlooked. So that is what that's what my mission is. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this Q&A. Thank you for asking the questions that you've asked. Keep me on my toes and thinking, and I look forward to seeing you hopefully in the course. Thanks for watching.